We are back with Green Mountain Mornings on WKVT 100.3 FM, AM 1490. 23 past the hour, and I'm your host, Olga Peters. And I want to welcome to the studio Wendy Levy from the Commons. Hi, Wendy.
Good morning, Olga.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Today's segment is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television and will be online later today. Broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight on BCTV is sponsored by the Brattleboro Savings and Loan. Wendy, welcome to Friday.
Is that what day it is?
It is Friday.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. It must be Friday.
You were talking in an email later last night, actually, when we were kind of discussing what would be on the show, about some changes in Putney around businesses. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Lisa Taylor, who owns Swirl, the consignment store, announced recently that she purchased the old Putney Public Library building, the one that, is sort of the building that doesn't look like the other buildings.
Oh, yes,
in
that
Putney.
one.
Yeah,
that
so
one.
it's right on the corner of Old Route 5 and Main Street, a.k.a. New Route 5. And so that building used to have the Putney Public Library in it from 1967 or 68. The building was built in 67 to 2005, when the Putney Public Library had their own brand new building built for them, which is where they are today. Mm-hmm. So, when I heard about that, I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting story because it's a really interesting building. You know, I've always noticed it and kind of admired it. And when I moved to this area, the library was still there, but I didn't live in Putney, so I would, I moved to this area in 91. So
that's right. I forgot. You attended Marlboro College, didn't you?
Yeah, so I would have really no reason to go in there. I always went to Brooks, or when I was at Marlboro, I went to the college's library. So I contacted Lisa and, wanted to talk to her about it and also wanted to get some history of the building, which she had, which I really appreciated. And I went to visit her in the new space on Tuesday. Yeah, the day where it was just really horrible to drive around. Actually, it wasn't so bad to drive around. It was really horrible to walk.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, the roads were okay. Sidewalks were just terrible.
Yeah, they were ankle breakers, yes.
Yes, I went to visit her up there and got to see the inside of the building, which had been a residence for a while, but has been vacant for about a year. The person who lived there moved overseas and, it was just kind of sitting there. But so they're making some minor changes to the building in anticipation of Swirl moving in, such as so one of the striking features about that building is it's a lot of glass. Mm-hmm. It's in that kind of mid-century modernist style where you have an open concept, a high ceiling, sort of low-hanging eaves, and almost entire walls made out of single-pane glass.
That can get cold.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the heating. I figured, well, I don't know if that's germane to a story about a consignment store moving in, but, she'll figure it out pretty quickly. So some of the windows on the Route 5 side had been boarded up, probably to give the guy some privacy, I would imagine, because it's a lot of glass. Mm-hmm. So they're taking those down, and I think it's going to look really nice as a store because you want a lot of light in your store and you want display windows. But they're keeping some of the old library shelves for display, which I think is kind of nice because when you're talking about a consignment store, which is about reusing and repurposing, well, they're doing that to this building and to the the contents that were there from one of the, from a long time former tenant. So I thought that was kind of a cool story. And also, Lisa brought up a good point when I was talking to her. In the last handful of years, Putney's sort of retail footprint has really diminished.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was curious about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Offerings isn't there anymore. The Putney Pizza isn't there anymore. And there was one or two other things that I remember. Well, there is a new bookstore, but there was an old bookstore. So that's sort of a switch. But it seems like it's not, there's not as much going on with retail stuff. And, Lisa was talking about how she lamented that. And so by moving her store, which is right now in the same building as the River Valley Credit Union building, like, kind of across the street from the co-op and near Curtis's and stuff. By moving it closer to downtown, she hopes to, spur some revitalization there. So
Give it
we'll see.
much more like a walking experience. You stop by and you go to the Putney store, and then
Right,
you
right.
drop by Swirl. And,
Yeah, you can go to the post office, you could go have lunch at like the diner or whatever. But um, yeah, so I think that's an admirable effort on her part.
now, is this her third
It
new
will be.
location?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she started out at I don't remember the address, but it's the old Texaco station.
Okay.
So where Katie's is
Hmm.
now. And so she had bought that business when it used to be called Recollections. So some folks might remember that. So that was in 1998. So she bought it, changed the name, made a few changes, but it was in the same location. And then she moved up, when was it? I think 2004. No, that doesn't sound right. 4 years ago. I'm getting my fours mixed up. About 4 years ago, she moved it up to where it is right now, and then she's going to move again. So, but she's been in business for 14 years.
Good on her.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, we wish her all the luck at her new location
Yeah.
in downtown Putney.
Yeah, and then people who were never in the old library can go in and see that building because it is pretty remarkable. It's pretty striking when you go in there.
What was your
nice.
favorite part of it?
Part of what?
Of the building when you got to go see it?
I would say the openness of it
Okay.
and the light. I mean, even on that day on Tuesday, which was grim and freezing rain and nasty, it still had nice light in there. It felt bright and really welcoming.
Wendy and I will return after the break. We are back with Green Mountain Mornings on WKVT 100.3 FM, AM 1490, Brattleboro's news talk station. 12 degrees out there, and welcome back to my guest, Wendy Levy from the Commons. Thank you for being here today, Wendy.
Thank you for having me.
And I know on this show we have discussed when Harmony Birch has been on the show from the Reformer, we've discussed a little bit about the Bellows Falls Fire Department,
Hmm.
but you are just branching out and starting to cover Bellows Falls along with all the other towns you cover for the Commons.
Right, because I don't have enough to do.
Of course not, no.
But somebody from the paper really needs to cover Bellows Falls, so
There you go.
that's who we got.
Hey, as someone who used to be the sole full-time reporter for the Commons, I feel your scheduling.
Yeah, I'm the
difficulties.
only reporter, and I'm not even full-time.
That's right.
So, yeah, if you have any extra money lying around, listeners, please send it to the Commons.
Send it to the Commons.
And I don't
now.
mean $50. I mean, like, add some zeros on there. Was that shameless?
No.
All right.
No, that was fact.
That was a fact. Absolutely. No embellishment there.
Nope. So you recently met with is it the interim town manager and the fire
And the
chief?
fire chief. Yeah.
And how did that meeting go?
It went really well. They were happy to talk to me, and I was happy to talk to them to learn more about this story. So for folks who don't know, as of, I guess, about a month ago, the Bellows Falls Fire Department, which serves the village of Bellows Falls, their staffing was greatly reduced. They had to get rid of 4 full-time firefighters. And so right now they have a chief, and I'm trying to look up my notes to see what the staffing is. But yeah, it was diminished quite a bit. There's a full-time fire chief and then 25 call members who are paid if they want to. But there's not a person in the station house all the time, or, as there used to be. So yeah, I mean, losing 4 full-time firefighters is a pretty big deal. And the reason why it happened was that when the budget was being discussed for the fiscal year, taxes didn't go up, but they had a reassessment recently in the village, and actually some people's property values went down, but some school stuff went up, and yeah, and folks are feeling the pinch. I mean, regardless of how or why or where, people are looking at their checkbooks right now.
And people had a petition. And
there was a petition
they
where
asked the trustees to cut the budget.
Yeah, the trustees had to cut the budget by around $240,000. And so the way, there's not a lot of places where the Bellows Falls trustees can cut the budget because their budget doesn't cover very much. It's police and fire and maybe a couple other smaller things.
Mm.
And so that was the way that came down. The thing is, though, according to the fire chief, a lot of folks didn't realize that when they said to the trustees, you need to cut the budget by $240 something thousand, they didn't realize it was pretty much all coming from the fire department.
Right.
So, there we are. So that happened in August. And because the firefighters in Bellows Falls are union, with the contract with the union to make that kind of personnel change, that they needed 120 days notice.
Mm-hmm.
So the transition, when that change occurred, was I guess in early January, very early January. And so when I went up there, it was maybe a week or two after the change had happened, and I wanted to just check in. How is it going? How's your response time? And just to find out a little bit more about the issue. When the budget talks happened and that change was made in August, Randy Hullhut, who's with the Commons, he's the deputy news editor, he went up and covered that. And, so I was able to, it's not that the Commons has ignored it. It's just, here we are now saying what's going on. Also, there was a pretty major fire in the village the day before the transition was supposed to happen. I mean, sort of hours before the transition was supposed to happen.
Right.
And the sad part of the story is that the person whose house burned down is one of the Bellows Falls trustees who voted to cut the fire department.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and this happened before the transition. So, this person received the benefits of the fully staffed fire department, but, what a strange thing to happen, pretty uncomfortable for everybody involved. And the house isn't a total loss. They can rebuild it. They have to put a new roof on it from what I heard. But yeah, what a, ugh.
Yeah, uncomfortable situation.
Yeah,
I think is a
absolutely.
good descriptor.
Yeah, I think most people would say, wow, our hearts go out to everybody involved in that. That's pretty crummy. So, so I went up and talked to them about that situation. But the kind of tricky thing is the story doesn't end there. I think in December, the trustees asked the interim town manager of Bellows Falls, Rockingham, to come up with a proposal to completely do away with the Bellows Falls Fire Department.
Huh.
So Rockingham, of which Bellows Falls is a village, Rockingham has its own fire department.
Right.
However, so I read the report from the town manager. Rockingham that fire department doesn't want to, the select board doesn't want to, because Rockingham has its own select board, and the fire department, they don't want to absorb the Bellows Falls Fire Department, because when we're talking about fighting fires, it's two very different styles. Rockingham is
it's a much more rural, yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about, houses that are far away from each other, barns, things like that, or
Brush fires.
Brush fires, exactly, and often single family homes. When you're talking about Bellows Falls Village, you have buildings that are close to each other. You have old buildings that are often the balloon construction.
Those are fun. Fire loves to go through those type of constructions.
And a lot of them are chopped up into apartment houses. So are they up to who knows? But you have, multiple families or, disparate individuals living in a house. You don't know who's home. You don't know who's not. Mm-hmm. You also have chemical plants, places with chemicals and things. It's a very different type of firefighting. Mm-hmm. So who knows if this will go anywhere? But, the town manager came up with the report, and, people can read it if they want. And
where can people find the report if they want to?
You can go to rockbf.org. You have to dig a little, as you do with most municipal websites. Yeah. You have to click on this and then click on that and then look for that tab and look for that drop down. Or you can just call and say, where do I find this? Or, can you send this to me?
Were there other options in the report that the town manager explored, or was it solely focused on what it would look like for Rockingham to absorb Bellows Falls Fire Department?
I don't remember, actually.
Oh, sorry for the pop quiz.
Yeah, that's okay. No, it's a fair question. I don't want to say yes or no because I can't remember.
Okay.
So everybody go read it yourself to find the answer to Olga's question.
You know, I've been kind of watching this unfold in Bellows Falls because, in part, I'm really fascinated with how fire departments work.
Me too.
And one thing, I don't know if they talked about this or if it was in the report, but has anyone talked about um, the medical aspect of fire departments? Because so many fire
Oh,
departments now, you know, you got paramedics on board and everything like that, and they
right. The fire
respond.
department shows up. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. That I wish that I had talked to you before I wrote the story because I never even thought about that. So I'm fairly new at municipal reporting and definitely new to covering major fire departments because up until I don't know, earlier this year, I wasn't covering, excuse me, earlier last year, I should say, 2017, I wasn't covering Brattleboro.
Hmm.
Because when you were at the Commons, that was your
That
job.
was my
And
beat.
then it
Yeah.
took a while for me to get into that. So I'm pretty low on the learning curve of how to cover a fire department. The funny thing is I come from a firefighting family, but firefighting was a lot different in the 1970s and 1980s when I was a little kid from how
Hmm.
it is now. So even if my dad and my stepdad would have told me all the details, they would be very different from
Yeah.
what's going on now. So I'm kind of getting a crash course. I've been covering the police and fire facilities, um, all that construction and renovation that's been happening here in Brattleboro. And then with the debate about the aerial ladder truck,
Right.
with the Brattleboro Select Board, if that apparatus is needed, et cetera. So, I'm learning here and there, but it's still taking me some time. But I enjoy it. I think it's really fascinating. Oh, also in Dummerston, I was covering when they got their new fire station. So, I'm learning in little bits, but it's a lot to catch up with, and it's not the only thing I have to study.
Yeah, you have to. That's one thing about being Wendy's what's known in journalism parlance as a GA reporter. So general assignment,
Oh, I thought it
meaning
was like general admission because I gone to so many concerts. But yes, general assignment. That's
general
me.
assignment. So while she might be focused on certain towns, she can cover everything from fire departments to municipal coverage to dog bites
Mm-hmm.
to human
To
interest
to
pieces.
a tire pile in Putney that's been there for at least 40 years.
Right.
That's one of my favorite things to
That
cover.
that was a
I
good
hope they
one.
start talking about it in the spring again. I'm sure Randy and Jeff, if they're listening, are like, no, we're tired of
not
hearing about the
not the
tire
tire
pile.
pile.
Like, no, it's like the seventh, eighth, ninth wonder of the world. And it's here in Windham County.
In Putney.
In Putney, who knew? So
But
anyway, yeah. So I get, and I also write arts pieces,
yeah.
and like you said, human interest. I'm all over the place, which is kind of fun because then I get to learn
Well, that's what I was going to
so
say.
much.
The learning curve for a GA reporter is extremely steep because every time you come to a an article that you're going to cover or a situation, it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be new. Not 9 times, 7 times out of 10 it's going to be a completely new
Oh
situation.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, things that I'm not covering are Act 46. Thank goodness. I'm not covering anything at Entergy.
Hmm.
I mean, that was Mike Fair's beat.
Yep.
I'm a nerd. I have a really great capacity for learning, but there's a limit. There's really a limit. So, yeah.
Which you're learning about now too.
My limits? Absolutely.
Limits. We should all be reminded of those sometimes.
Yes.
Um, eh, both Rockingham and Newfane are working on their town plans right now.
That they are. Yeah. Both towns are updating those, and that's the Planning Commission. And so I was in Bellows Falls again this past Tuesday on the day when nobody should have been driving anywhere. I was driving everywhere. And so I went up and met with the town planner and let's see, 4 members. Yeah, 4 members of the Planning Commission. I think there are 7 right
Mhm.
now. And yeah, we talked about the updating of the town plan. So they're in the very early stages right now, and they were part of that municipal planning grant distribution that came
Right.
from the state. I guess, yeah, that was announced in December. So they're getting some money to help with that. And, there's new state regulations that they have to incorporate into the town plan, but what the town planner said is that, so there's different chapters in a town plan. And for those listening at home who don't know, the town plan really sets the guidance for the town.
Right.
What are the priorities? What are the things that are important to things like land use,
Goals.
goals, yeah, things like that. And so it's a document that, when done well, the people who are making it, the planning commission, pull in a lot of public comment. There needs to be a lot of participation, and that's what the planning commission in Rockingham, Bellows Falls, that's what they want. That's what they want to do. They're still working out how that's going to happen, if they're going to have meetings, if they're going to have sort of work sessions. So it's in the very beginning stages, and they're also going to put out a request for qualification soon for a consultant who can help them write the town plan. So organizations like the Wyndham Regional Commission, folks like that, can help to actually write the thing because they know what the state is looking for in terms of language. Because one of the benefits of the town plan also is that
this is important.
This is really important. You know what I'm going to say is that it sets a town up to qualify for grants to help further these priorities that are listed in the town plan. So it's really crucial to get it right. Yeah. And it's also crucial to have it be a reflection of what the people who live there think is important. So it's a lot of work.
And it's also really important. A lot of people, it's such a dry document and it can be a dry process. But here's the thing. The town plan is like the umbrella that stretches over the entire town.
True.
And then so many other, or you could think of it the center of a wheel and then spokes coming off it.
Mm-hmm.
But it then, like you said, will guide or direct other parts of how the municipality operates.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is we live in a Dillon state, meaning
right, that's right.
The state has the final say on everything.
If it's not in statute, you can't do it.
Right. It's like the state is the major mama here. But in some cases, if state law and the town are not jiving on something,
mm-hmm.
the state will consider the town plan
mm-hmm.
in making its decision about whether to go the state's way or the town's way.
That's really important to note. So there is a way to kind of backfill.
Right. It's not a guarantee because
right.
it is at the end of the day a Dillon state.
Right. But you have a chance.
Yeah.
And you have to be organized, and you have to show the state that you are organized and that you're fulfilling the will of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the members of the Planning Commission she helped to start the Bellows Falls Community Bike Project.
Oh, neat.
And so recently she was going around to get people to sign a petition to get some funding, sort of in the social services line item
mm-hmm.
kind of thing, from the town, from the taxpayers, in the town meeting warning this year to get that, to get funding for the Bellows Falls Community Bike Project. So as she's going around with this petition, she said to me, when I showed the petition to townspeople, before they even read it and they knew who I was, part of the BF Bike Project, they said, "Oh, is this about the bike path that's going to go around Bellows Falls?" There is no bike path that's going to go around Bellows Falls, but people are starting to think about it. So what's really interesting is there's so many different ways for people who are part of the process, who are on the planning commission, who are, otherwise involved in municipal governance, to gather information from people. And one of the ways is just to go out and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a really great kind of anecdote, like, oh, what Bellows Falls Bike Project? Well, the one that people obviously want.
Right. Wendy, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to you being on the show in another 2 weeks.
I'll be here.